All right, chapter 5. I know you guys are about ready to give us an overview of what we just talked about in chapter 4. Chapter 5 is on participation. And it's not an easy chapter to sum up in the 15 minutes or so that we have to sum up. But it should be noted, a couple of things really should be taken from that chapter. One, the text points out that voting is basically the political participation, that is most exercised. And I would argue that voting is the second most. The first most political exercise, political participation that's exercised by the citizens is complaining, is political discourse, is the discussion that happens at the coffee shop or at the bar or at the kitchen table that happens in public just as much as it happens in private. Individuals who protest and complain and argue. And I'm not talking about the organized protesting because that is on the list and it's lower than voting in terms of people who participate in it. But individuals who just have the discussion and challenge their government. You have to remember that that is not something that is allowed in other countries. You talk too loudly about how the government's doing a bad job, you wake up disappeared, and they find you 10 years later in some onion field or something like that. That happens in other countries. Thankfully, it doesn't happen in this country, to our knowledge. I guess I wouldn't know. I guess I just wake up and you'd find me 10 years from now if it actually happens. But the ability for you and I to challenge our government and say, you know what, this government is doing a good job, or this government is doing a bad job, that's what most of us, 99% of us, that's political participation that we engage in. Just the discussion. The next then is the voting. And the voting ranges, when you talk about individuals who vote, in presidential years it's much higher than in non-presidential years in terms of voting. 60+% in this last election. Usually it hovers around 50%. In off-year elections, years where the president's not running, you're talking about down to 40%. In primary elections, 20%. In local elections, maybe 15%. Local elections being elections for city council members, right? They're the only individuals who may be on the ticket. And then we get into school board elections, which will happen kind of like in a February or in May, not regular election days. You're talking about 5%, possibly 5% of the eligible voters voting. So who's on the ballot? The perceived importance matters in terms of voter turnout participation. The text does ask about whether or not we should move towards a compulsory process. And what compulsory process, a compulsory voting is that you would have to vote or you'd be fined. Like you have to register your car if you want to drive. Doesn't mean everybody does it, right? But it certainly damps down the number of individuals who don't. Well, that's compulsory voting is the same thing. Not everybody in a compulsory voting state votes. There's still a percentage who don't, but it's a lot higher than it is in the United States. You're talking about numbers up to 98%, for example, in Australia. Or I believe Belgium also has compulsory voting. High voter turnout. To me, and this is Johnny Williams, it doesn't have to be you, to me I see a problem with that. Forcing an individual to make a choice when they're either A, not educated in the choice they want to make, or B, don't like any of the above, and you can go and cast a ballot for none of the above, by the way. But that fact that you're forcing individuals to do that, to me, is undemocratic in a way. I should be able to be sloth and lazy and keep my ass at home if I don't want to go vote. Ignorant and blissful at the same time. And again, I think that that's an American right to not be involved in the political participation process if we don't want to be. It's another example of individual freedom. Now, having said that, I think you're an idiot if you do not participate in the voting process. Not an idiot if you don't know. I mean, I equate that to running around with a gun, not knowing if it's loaded or not. Not knowing who you're voting for or what that vote will do to the government or your quality of life. That's stupid. Voting for voting's sake is asinine. But if you have that degree of knowledge as to what the candidates stand for, whether it's just on party lines or not, and you don't take the opportunity to enact change to your betterment, that just Just doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, but we have electoral college, and I wrote a whole paper on it, and it's just, I'd rather we not have that, because really,
You're talking about something else. You're talking about the electoral college now,
yeah.
which we will talk about the electoral college, and it's important. I don't want to step on your toes here, but it is important to recognize the electoral college is used in one election. The election for president.
Yeah.
Every other individual who represents you is making decisions. Every other elected part of government is deciding who gets what. It's done by popular vote, not by electoral college. And that we'll talk about the electoral college and how it is reflective of the popular vote because you are choosing who is doing the voting. And you wrote a paper on it, so you know what I'm talking about. We'll touch on that. Do we need the electoral college now today? I don't think we do personally. I like the electoral college because more often than not, the outcome is amplified for the state of Michigan because of how many electors we have. But we'll talk on that. I do